In a world of uncertainty, what does my culture say? I think when we focus on certainty in a world of uncertainty, what are they certain about? We're going to take good care of our people. We're going to be reliable. Why? I would start with customer. I trust your reliability. I trust your people's commitment to serve me. So what I tend to be certain about in the culture area is, are we building culture from the outside in?
Hey, welcome back, everybody, to the Culture Work Podcast. I'm Chester Elton. I'm with my dear friend and co-author, Adrian Gostick. This is the podcast where we bring in executives that talk about the future of the culture of work. They're executives, they're movers, they're shakers, they're the thinkers of tomorrow. And we have a guest today that is a dear friend of ours. Need I say, Adrian, legendary? Tell our audience a little bit about our special guest.
You bet. Today's guest is somebody, again, dear friend of ours. We could barely get on the podcast beforehand. We were catching up and having fun. But Dave Ulrich literally wrote the book and the modern playbook on HR. He's a professor at the University of Michigan's Ross School of Business, author of more than 30 books, including HR from the Outside In, and Business Week named him the #1 management educator. And he's known as the father of modern HR for good reason. Welcome to the podcast, Dave.
Well, I think we're going to end the podcast right now because it has nowhere to go but down, because you've set an expectation that's totally unrealistic. But thank you. And Adrian and Chester have been friends for so long, in another century, even another millennia. But thank you. It is so great to just join two friends in conversation.
I know what you mean by that. You know, every now and again, Adrian and I present together and they give us the intros and they go, I want to meet those guys. Well, listen, you spent decades transforming the way we think about HR with all your... The thing you'll know about Dave is it's very much research-based. I mean, he's really thought this through. He interviews people all over the place. And then he takes it down and puts it into models and makes it very practical. You know, he's moved it from administrative and transactional to really being a strategic business partner in HR, which has been a big move. He's influenced countless organizations and small countries. We've even talked about that, helping them to turn the people strategy into a competitive, advantage. Which is amazing.
And I'd love to, well, I've never asked you this, Dave, is take us back to the beginning, because when you started in this business, HR they had a clipboard, and we were making sure payroll was working, and we were making sure that, the lights were on in a way. You pushed this idea that HR needed to have a seat at the table. Start us at the beginning, and what drove that challenge for you to push HR out of that maybe traditional role 10 or 20, 30 years ago that we had?
Well, let me go back and start. You mentioned research. I ended up doing a dissertation, and I'm going to share something that I don't always share, but it's so powerful for me. Back then, they'd sell a dissertation. I kept the check. So I spent a year writing a dissertation, and I made $11.85. But what I studied was the theory of taxonomy. Taxonomy says, how do you make complexity simple? And that's what I was interested in, and it's a research field, and we do a lot of data stuff. And then you say, in an organization, what does it take to get things done well? Well, you got to know where you're going. Okay. Somebody said a great line, if you're on the road to hell, slow down. Don't go faster. Agility is not always a good idea. But you got to know where you're going, and then you got to be able to get there. Well, how do you get there? Through people, organization, leadership, the things you talk about, the two of you, culture. I think a culture podcast is brilliant. Does our culture reflect where we're going? So you got to do, and one of my messages that's so strong is paradox. Everybody says you move from and to. You move from administrative to strategic, short-term to long-term, inside to outside. And I go, no, I don't think so. It's and also. We still got to do the administrative, and we have to do the strategic. We got to take care of people and the organization. We got to express love and kindness and accountability. And the ability to navigate that tension is where I think HR needs to head, and not just HR. So that's kind of where it started. Taxonomy. How do you build simple models that create value for others? And that's the agenda that I've had for all my career.
Yeah, it is really interesting how you've been at the forefront of that for decades. Let me ask you a little bit about this HR from the outside in. You're kind of famous for that. You flipped that conventional thinking. Explain why it's so important for businesses and leaders to really have HR at the table. HR was always kind of that senior VP that sometimes was invited, but not always.
Well, and let me change the game real quick and give an example. Here's legacy HR. And by the way, I think HR is at the table. Maybe not the person, but the HR issues. Because any business executive says, how do I deliver against this strategy of where I'm headed? Well, I got to get people, I got to get technology, I got to get resources. So the HR issues have been at the table for a long time. How do we frame it? Legacy example. Simple example. Somebody's in HR and they're going to build a leadership training program. They're going to hire a brilliant organization in Florida. How do you build our training? And so the HR person goes in and says, I want $500,000 to build a training program. And they talk about it. Wrong. Here's what the new logic is. The HR person goes in and says, and I'll give an example, so I'm going to go too long on this because it's so profound, and says, hi, I'm here to help us build relationships with customers. I want to get more revenue from our targeted customers. I want to increase our price earnings ratio for stock price. I want to change our reputation in the industry. In fact, all the OKRs, KPIs, goals of you, the business team, I'm here to make happen. And they say, but I thought you were HR. I am. We're going to train, we're going to pay, we're going to hire, we're going to do all of those internal systems so that those outcomes happen for you. Let me give an example. Retail store. And you could pick a dozen of these. New head of HR comes in and they say, we need a training program. And they say, okay, go ask for $500,000. And she says, no, I want some research. Here's what she found. In stores with higher affect, emotional affect, well-being, culture, the things you do on the Culture podcast, they have a different revenue per basket size. In the average store, they got $40 a basket. In the stores with higher, they got 48, 20%. I'll make up some numbers now. It's a $100 billion revenue company. 20% is 120. So when she walked into the executive team, new head of HR, she said, I'm here to help us make $20 billion. What are you talking about? She showed them the data and they said, yeah, the data's true. We've seen it. We know the stores that produce more because we visit them. And they said, we don't believe you're 20. She said, good, make it 10. I'm here to give you $10 billion. I'm not here to ask for 500,000. I want $1 billion. And she got it. And they said, if you can show us a 10-to-1 return, that's a risk. We'll take it. That happened 2 years ago. I saw her a few months ago. She said, this year I got 1.5.
Wow.
And so to me, this is HR is not about HR. This is HR to create value for a customer, to get the basket size to go from 40 to 48, to get the investor to say, your price earnings ratio. Another quick example, I'm in a company, their market value is $40 billion, and they're trading at a 20% discount from their competitor. So you say, by the way, if you're an HR person listening here, what's your price earnings ratio? What are your top 4 competitors? The companies you benchmark with on comp, you all do that. Get their price earnings ratios. This company was 20% below. So I said to this senior executive, the CEO, I said, you're trading at a 20% discount to the market. That's $8 billion. And he said, you think I don't know that? If I can't fix that, I'm going to become a consultant. I mean, I know you got to, and I said, that's why I'm here. I went to the head of HR. They said, why are you talking about that stuff? We're here to do training and hiring. No, we're not. We're here to get you a 20% premium in your price earnings ratio to get some percent of that $8 billion. Now, that is such a cool headset. HR is my headline. HR is not about HR. It's creating value for stakeholders.
That's a great example. I love the specificity, and it kind of comes to what I wanted to ask you about, because you've talked about HR playing different roles. The administrative expert, like you say, it's the and also, right? It's the employee champion, the change agent, the strategic partner. You've talked about all those. Well, what about the culture agent? Is that part of HR's role now?
More than ever. We love research. And again, we love big research databases that nobody reads. Did I show you my $11 check? Here's the question. My fingers represent talent. We fight the war for talent. My fist represents organization, the culture. Here's the research question. Which will drive the outcomes the most? The basket share increase, the market valuation. Is it your talent, war for talent, or is it the organization culture? We studied that. Do we need to build individual competencies or do we need to build great teams? Individual, team, 4-1, 4-1 organization. You play a game with teams. And this is a transformation of the HR field. We are so, I'm in HR. I'm going to build you a great workforce. I'm going to build you a great employee. I'm going to build individual competence. Today, the big buzz is I'm going to build a skill-based organization. True, true, true. It'll get you 20% of the way there until you can create a team. And the data here is so powerful. Pick a team sport, basketball, hockey, Chester, this is your niche. How often is the leading scorer soccer? How often is the winner of the Golden Boot? He scores more goals on the team that wins the World Cup. 20%. It's the same 20-80. Over and over. How often when a band breaks up does the individual outperform the band? 20%. Individuals are ingredients in a mix. The organization is the menu that creates the culture. And so you're moving to a culture podcast, Culture Works. It is a critical part. And HR people, so you're going to go into the team and they say, okay, how are you going to build this 20% increase in basket size or 20% increase in market value? I'm going to hire people. True. I'm going to train people. True. I'm going to pay people. True. 20%. What are you going to do to build a culture? What are you going to do to build a new culture that brings those all-stars into a team?
What is also interesting, Dave, on the sports analogy, and I know they're overused because they work, right? Often the team that gets rid of the big star does better.
Oh, I hadn't thought of that. That's so good because what happens then?
Yeah, the team steps up.
Yeah, the team steps up and they play better together.
Yeah.
I mean, again, sports are overstated, but it's not just sports. Have I brought together the mix of people that work? And one example in business, there's some great work out of Harvard by Boris Groysberg and others. You take a high performer and you move her or him to a new company, and they don't perform as well.
All the time.
All the time, unless they go with the team. If you take their team, because their high performance was not just what they did, it's their capacity to bring together teams that outperform individuals. When you say you're studying culture, I just get really excited. I mean, you guys have been brilliant about gratitude. You've done anxiety. You've done all this incredible work. I love that you're moving now to culture because it's the integration of that work that makes the whole more than the parts.
So over the last decade, where have you seen the biggest shift in HR? Because, it's so interesting. Adrian and I are starting to speak a lot on, the changes that people are. Give me the title of our new speech, Adrian. Uncertainty. There we go.
Leading through uncertainty. Yeah, that's one of our most popular speeches now.
Yeah, and this idea that the world is changing so fast, and AI is so fast, and the information coming is so fast, and more people are on anxiety meds, and on and on and on. What have you seen in the last decade that's made the biggest shift to building great cultures, particularly from the HR standpoint?
I'm going to give three, and I'm going to go a little beyond culture. I call them inflection points. I think Andy Grove at Intel popularized that term where you go up an S curve and then you got to take the next step or else you decline. And I see three. Number one, we already talked about. HR is not about HR as much as it is creating stakeholder value. So all those examples. What am I going to do to increase investor value? What am I going to do? I'd love to listen to your last three podcasts, and I will. I'll listen to all of them. What percent of time did your guest talk about customer and investor? To me, that's a new HR shift. And that's why it's not about HR. It's about the value you create. Number two, once they say, I'm going to create, I got it. I want to create more market value. I want to get revenue from a customer. What do? Well, there's three things. You do great talent. You got to have good ingredients. I mean, if you have bad ingredients, the menu's not going to work. Great culture. I call talent individual competence. I call culture organizational capability, competence versus capability. And the integration of those two is leadership. That's talent. That's organization, culture. That's leadership. But I love those three because it's really simple. That's taxonomy. I call that human, talent, capability, organization, and leadership to bring them together. So you say, we want to increase market value. Do we have the people our customers would choose? Do we have the culture that becomes a brand in the marketplace? We can talk more about, well, I'll go a step deeper. Most people define culture as our internal values, our norms, our unwritten rules. I've worked in a company for many years, and I think Chester has, where there's a lot of unwritten rules.
Yeah.
And Adrian, there's unwritten rules. Well, here's my comment. Will those unwritten rules cause a customer to buy more product? I love to think about culture through the eyes of the customer. In other words, somebody said, well, that's brand. And I said, absolutely. Your firm brand is your culture. And if they're not, why are you building the culture? And then leadership. We posted at Michigan when I was teaching a few years ago, 20 companies, send in your leadership competence model. So they posted them on the wall with no name. We could identify the consulting firm more than the company. This is in a wheel. Anyway. And then I said, if you're going to build leadership competence, where should you start? With customers, not with legacy leaders who succeeded in the past. That's our model of competence. Tell me 20 leaders who were good, 20 who were bad. What were the skills? And I go, great, you've discovered what you could do 20 years ago. So who are your top customers? What are you promising them? Service, reliability, quality, cost, good. That's your culture. I love that number 2. So number 1, HR is not about HR. It's about stakeholder value. Number 2, through human capability, talent, leadership, and organization. And number 3, using AI as an enabler.
Yeah. Now, so this AI thing is everybody's terrified. And yet, everybody's terrified about everything, by the way. I remember selling in New York City. We sold media time. And fax machines came in. This is how old I am. And our manager said, there's one fax machine on the floor for like 150 salespeople. And you've got to get special permission from your manager to use it. And I remember going to my boss and saying, look, I've got a buyer needs these rates now. And if we don't send them to her now, we're going to get $0. You tell me whether she used the fax machine or not, And it was so insane. I was saying, look, I get that you're afraid of it, but are you going to take away the elevators? Like what? We're on the 50th floor, So this idea that there's always the negative, but the AI, and this is my question for you. My opinion is that AI can make us better people. It's a powerful tool, and it just depends how you use it, right? Are you of the opinion that that people management and so on is going to be enhanced by AI, or are we going to be threatened by AI? I've given you my answers, so yeah.
Well, and I'd love to hear Adrian's as well. Adrian, what do you think? By the way, this is so cool. I get to interview you.
No, that's great. And we're going to do this in a little moment. We're going to have a little round table here. But no, I think it's a tool. I think Jess is right. I think it's a tool that we can use. And if we don't, we're sticking our heads in the sand. And organizations, it's like the fax machine that Jess is talking about. Organizations need to put this in part of their culture. This is how we use it. In fact, I have a nephew who's in finance, and he says, how far are we into AI? He says, I think it was a couple of weeks ago, we're finally getting trained in how to use AI in our finance job.
It's a tool to do what?
And I think it's a tool. If I'm a good writer, it can make me a better writer. If I'm a good analyst, it can make me a better analyst. I think it can help me with my job if I am controlling what's coming out of it. And I'm not believing that everything that does is gospel.
Yeah, I think it helps you do more of what you're good at. Like it allows you to do more. I mean, think about, I want to do good. Okay, well, how do I do more good? Well, if I've got a tool that can help me do what I do faster, better, and at a higher volume, why would I say no to that?
Here's my answer, and it's pretty simple. AI is about a timeless principle. I love timeless principles and timely practices. The timeless principle is information. Everything you talked about. I want to write better. How do I get information? I want to do an analyst better. I want to know how I can do good in the world. All of us who use AI simply need more information, and any job related to information. Guess what? That's why HR is so critical. Hiring people, that's an information choice. How to pay people, that's an information choice. How to train people is about information. AI enables access to information in an incredibly efficient way. It's also risky. In fact, I'm going to post next week. Having said that, I post on Tuesday every week on LinkedIn. I'm going to talk about paradoxes in AI. I think AI is full of paradox. AI times AI equals success. Artificial intelligence times authentic intimacy. Without the authentic intimacy, AI is mute. It's simply an algorithm giving you information that stands alone. Authentic intimacy translates that information into a way to connect with you. So Chester's question, what can I do to serve others? I can put up some machines that help people get gifts. That's good. How do I now translate that information into my daily actions? with emotion, with, I called it authentic intimacy because it ties with AI. And I love the multiplier. If you do one without the other, you do intimacy without the information to know where to focus it. If you do AI data, you don't know where to focus it. That's one paradox that I think AI has to navigate. The second one is the way I learned AI. I have a daughter who's was a professor of sociology. She called and said a year or two ago, Dad, my job's over. How come? Students are never going to write a paper again. They're just going to do an AI paper. What's the demographic in, pick a country, in Russia on birth rates? Or I just saw one in the US. What's the demographic on birth rates? Sociologist. I'm done. And I said, it can't be that bad. So I went on AI and I said, what's the future of HR? I called her back in 300 words. I called her back and said, sweetheart, my job's over. I mean, that's a good answer. And she said, Dad, what are we going to do? And I said, I got to think about it. I read it. Here's the information you get from AI. You get a great summary of the past. Let me say it again. AI cannot create a future. And the summary of the past, I read that future of HR, the people you have on your podcast, the Linda Grant, Peter Capelli, it summarized their work beautifully, but it didn't create the future. If I went online and said, tell me about Chester and Adrian, they do work on gratitude, they do work on positivity, you're going, no, we do work on culture. Well, that's not in the AI database yet. So I think the human element of information is to create what's not there. So what my daughter said is, and it's really simple, turn in 2 papers. Paper 1 is the AI paper. Paper 2 is yours. I'm going to see if you've done AI well. Did you ask the right prompts? And did you learn how, Adrian, like your son, did you learn how to use AI? And paper 2, did you create something that nobody else has yet said? That for me is the genius of AI, but I don't love it to create new stuff. I've seen some people get addicted to AI. In fact, there was some recent research out of MIT. Those who use AI a lot lose some of their cognitive functioning because they become dependent on it. Yeah. They become dependent on it, and they lose that creativity that's the authentic intimacy that helps us grow.
Well, let's keep challenging each other here. This is our culture challenge segment. And so, Dave, we want to have you ask us a question about culture and HR and where we can fit.
I get to ask you a question. I'm so excited. Culture is a set of values that create value for a customer that causes them to buy our product. So what do you think is the biggest barrier to making culture happen?
That's a great question. And you know what? I'm going to let Adrian go first.
Yeah, he always does that. Here's what, in our research, again, when we wrote the book All In on culture, the first thing we found was what we called the burning platform, is people don't understand why they have to make the leap, right? Yeah. Don't understand the why behind changes, people within the organization. So we're telling them, you got to grab the bag and you got to do, and they're going, okay, I'll do it. And nobody really understands why. And in that case, most people don't want you to grab their bag. So the first thing we found was, look, why am I doing this? What's my burning platform? The second is sort of that resistance to culture is, I don't feel like a partner in this. I feel like you're just telling me what to do. I don't have a voice. So definitely we felt like, or our research showed, that people didn't feel they had a voice in the change, especially as it affected their job. And one of the big issues as well is this lack of any sort of positivity as they move toward success, whether it's accountability or recognition. That we're not letting people know these are the right behaviors. By promoting those behaviors, by recognizing those right behaviors, we just miss out as leaders in this flow.
Yeah. I think people just really are stuck in the way they've always done it. This has worked. I mean, one of the case studies that we've been using is Kodak. And Kodak invented the digital camera, for heaven's sake. They had a 90% share of photography at one point. And in comes this digital camera. And instead of being curious and saying, okay, how could this change what we do? How do we make it so that, it's, and I used the analogy, I said, a digital camera, no, you don't understand. People that take, photos, they want to take a picture and then they want to take that roll out of the picture and then they want to take it to a store and drop it off and come back 3 days later and get those 24 or 36 photos and realize that half of them are terrible and throw those away and then take the ones they've got and put some tape on it and put it in an album and show it to me, and then put that album on a shelf and then never look at it again. That's what they want, And I go, and everybody starts laughing. I go, you think I'm kidding, but it wasn't that long ago that's exactly what people did. And so I think the biggest risk, just to me lately, that as we've been thinking about this uncertainty, is I think one of the biggest barriers to really healthy cultures is a lack of curiosity, is an experimentation. And what Adrian says, empowering your people to say, hey, what's next? Now, really quick, because I know we're running out of time. I was just with a client that celebrated a 100-year anniversary, an insurance company, fabulous culture. Bad actors came in and shut down their systems for a month. They were offline for a month. Now, they didn't get any data. They didn't have to pay ransom. And they came through it brilliantly because they've got a culture that puts people first. We do the right thing. We go above and beyond without being asked. And we take care of our customers. Their culture and the way they live them, to your point, was so strong that they had customers calling them and saying, are you guys okay? Like, we understand that your systems, now I don't have a claim, I'm just checking in. Can you imagine? Their customers are checking in. And the joke was on their 100-year anniversary that they were going back to doing business like they did 100 years ago with a pad of paper and a pencil. To me, getting through the crisis, their culture was so strong, but they're constantly curious, and they're constantly asking their people and their customers, what do you need? How can we do this better? And that curiosity.
I'm going to go to your uncertainty. I think we live in a world of uncertainty. I mean, VUCA, whatever you want to call it. I think companies have learned to chase the uncertainty. I think that's a mistake. I think in a world of uncertainty, focus on what you're certain about. Who am I grateful for? In a world of uncertainty, what do I know I can do? In a world of uncertainty, now let's get into your work. What does my culture say? And I think when we focus on certainty in a world of uncertainty, the uncertainty goes on. I'm going to stay pure. My sense is if you explore that insurance company, what are they certain about? We're going to take good care of our people. We're going to be reliable. Why? Now, let me add to what you just said. It was interesting, Adrian. Why does culture matter? Because our people. I would start with customer. Culture matters at that insurance company because they trust your reliability. That if you have bad systems, you'll fix them. I trust your reliability. I trust your people's commitment to serve me. So what I tend to be certain about in the culture area is, are we building culture from the outside in? Culture, and the other question I was going to ask, what is culture? I think, and by the way, this is not new. Now I'm going to scare everybody. There was a book written in 1952 on culture by two anthropologists, and it had 164 definitions. Ed Schein and I disagreed on this, and I respect Ed Schein. He's the father of culture. He says, culture is the roots of the tree. It's the iceberg below the water. My comment is, let's build on that. Don't disagree. This is not from two. Yes, culture is the roots of the tree. It's the below the ice water, and it's the leaves of the tree that change according to season and customers. Yep. And if the leaves don't produce good fruit, then the culture is wrong. Yeah. I love roots, but I don't eat the roots. I eat the fruit. And so I think my certainty is culture is defined as an identity in the mind of my best customer, made real to my employees.
We like carrots, and I actually do eat the roots, but we digress. Hey, our time is blown by. It always does. I've got pages of notes. I'm going to ask for the rough cut of this. I'm going to listen to it again. It's like sitting at the feet of the master, isn't it, Adrian? I mean, it's just wonderful.
It is for me.
Right, there you go. So we've got a lightning round, okay? First thing that pops into your head. What's one HR principle that hasn't failed you?
Values defined by the receiver.
A book or concept that changed how you think about organizations?
I get in trouble every time I get asked. The Bible. And I know people freak out. I don't know if anybody's ever done that in a line, but it's been around for 2,000, longer than that, years, and it seems to have some pretty good stuff in it.
Yeah. And you can read it and reread it. Last one. Finish this sentence. The future of HR is
fantastic.
Love it. Well, thanks, David. You have been so generous with your time as always. We love learning from you. I remember you came and spoke to an organization Chester and I were working with maybe 20 years ago now, And I don't remember everything you said at that time, but I just remember the feeling. You have such positivity, such wisdom, and you made everybody feel, so good about what they were doing in HR. So thank you for all that you do for all of us out in the world to teach us and to help us learn and grow. Thanks, Dave.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Chester and I posted on LinkedIn, the simplest test of a great leader. Do people leave an experience with her or with him feeling better about themselves? I feel better about myself every time I interact with either of you. And I've had interactions, obviously, over 20 years. Thank you for making me feel better. I hope those who listen to this and other Culture Works podcasts leave feeling better. There is hope. There is hope.
Well, listen, sign up on LinkedIn. Dave posts every Tuesday. The research is there. The models are there. It's brilliant. Buy his books, listen to his advice, and share this podcast with a friend. We're delighted that you took time to be with us today. So thanks for all of you listening. Take care, and we'll see you again soon.